Ayy, badass black girls, and they making big moves. Ayy, badass black girls, nothing that you can't do. They are the future, I'm trying to tell ya. They want the best, no time to settle. They got the strength to handle the pressure. These are the queens, nobody better. Yeah, changing the narrative, that is imperative. They about to rock this. Tell the women that you got this. Got no time for people who are toxic. It's all love, good vibes. You know I got your back, girl. Talking issues that matter. This is badass black girl, yeah.
Hello everyone. Welcome to Badass Black Girl. We have two special guests with us today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hey everybody, I'm Ashley Jones. I had the pleasure of featuring last week, or whenever this is posted, on June, I think the 1st, maybe it was, and I did poetry. I'm a poet. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm excited to be back.
Hi, my name is Fabienne Josaphat. I am a writer, and some of you may already know me. Maybe you've already read my piece that has been featured by MJ. And I write mostly fiction. I also write poetry. And I live in South Florida, so I'm here. I'm hanging out, quarantined, isolating and all that stuff. So.
Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us for a very important conversation. I follow you on social media, and I know that you've been actively talking about, writing about everything that's going on right now, not just in terms of the quarantine, but in the protest. And that conversation has been a little taxing for me emotionally, and it got me curious. I wanted to know, how are you guys doing?
Well, it's a loaded question, MJ.
That's why I was hesitating too. Yeah.
I don't even know if I have language to adequately describe how I'm doing. What I've been saying to people as sort of a shorthand, especially when a lot of the, I don't want to use the word violent when talking about things being burned, because I don't want people to think that I'm saying it's an unnecessary siren. That's how I'll say that. But when a lot of that action was happening, I said to people who asked how I was doing, which also is a labor that we'll get to that later, having to explain how I'm doing to certain people. But I said, well, all these fires that are happening, all of the unrest, everything seems to be exploding, and, buildings are being, impacted. All of that is how I felt inside for most of my life, since I was able to know that I was Black in a place that did not like Black people. That's what's been going on in my body, in my mind, and having to manage all of that inferno and not letting it come out. And I felt like during that time, and even now, I'm seeing that manifest outside of my body, and it's a very dizzying sort of experience to see something that you've been so frustrated about for your whole life finally get some sort of recognition. And there's various byproducts of that. Some of it is more labor for us. Some of it is, false allyship. Some of it is true allyship. There's a lot that goes into it. So I'm just feeling like that. I'm feeling like I'm on fire.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Fabienne?
Well, I go through stages, I guess, or phases. I was feeling angry, and just extreme, but I think more than angry, I was extremely hurt. For a long time, I just could not connect with what was happening on the media because it was just so hard for me to watch. I only just recently and inadvertently watched a video where George Floyd was being murdered, because my body I could not do it. I could not watch it. So I went through that phase, and then I became grateful for the fact that the movement, because everyone had eyes on what had happened, the movement sort of spread outside of this country, just seeing the protests happening in other places just made me feel encouraged, because I felt like now, we've all seen it, right? Like, we all watched the same thing. How could you possibly deny it, right? So there was a little bit of hope with seeing that happen. And for a while I felt okay. And then that sort of changed. I started to feel like we're sort of going backwards, because now there's no coverage of protests happening as much anymore, or at all, really. We're not seeing that, but we are seeing other cases of people that we're losing, like Breonna Taylor and Elijah McClain, and that's been sort of pushing me back to where I was before, and I think more than anything, if there's a feeling that I could express, it's just frustration and sadness for the fact that it's a conversation that will never end. And I don't know what to do with that, but just coming to the realization that we're just never going to stop talking about this is, it does something to you. So that's where I'm at.
Wow, a lot of emotions. I mean, you guys have talked about the emotional impact. Ashley talked about the way the outside world became an expression, not an expression, but similar to what she was feeling inside. And Fabienne, you talked about your experience watching that video, not being able to watch the whole thing because you just couldn't deal with it. And it's making me think about the emotional labor that as Black women we are sometimes required to do. And I wanted to know, how do you deal with the emotional demands of the world right now? So many people want an explanation, what's going on. Sometimes I feel that I'm being asked to give a report on my Blackness. Like, oh yeah,
Yep.
It's exam time.
Yep.
Now let's see what grade you're gonna get. So how are you guys dealing with that kind of demands?
Well, I mean, I think maybe Ashley has more insight, but on my end, I just feel like I don't know. It's unavoidable. Like everyone wants to hear what you think, especially when they know that you're very vocal and that your art, your work is political. Everybody wants to know how you feel, and I wish that I could just say what I feel with my writing and have I don't want to have to answer that question every 5 minutes. So I haven't quite figured out how to field it though, because as much as I know I just said that the conversation never ends, I want to hope, I want to believe that in the midst of 100 people asking you that question, there might be 2 or 3 of them that genuinely want to know, what can I do? And like, I haven't done what I'm supposed to do, or what I don't know what to do. Can you point me in the right direction? And it's hard for you to actually say no. So I think the conversation, as hard as it is for us to have, when I get those questions and those inquiries, you want to be able to help.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer, and I wish I could just copy and paste that answer, Fabi. But I guess when you asked the question, MJ, I first thought to respond, am I handling it? I don't know. I don't know that I am handling it, well. On the one hand, I do have a lifetime of experience dealing with emotional labor, and especially around race. And of course, like Fabi was saying, being someone who writes about the political, people do expect to hear something from you. And on a certain level, sometimes I do just want to say, hey, have you read my books? That pretty much tells you what you need to know. The work has already been done. I don't have to keep regurgitating this because you can read it. It's available to you. But on the other hand, there is a personal desire, I guess, that I have to do whatever work needs to be done, no matter how uncomfortable it is for me, because I know that people did that before me, so that this work that I'm doing wouldn't be as hard as it could have been. You know, even though it is super tiring for me to answer questions about, oh, is this racist, or, you know, what should we be doing? What do you think? How can we fix it? All that stuff is really tiring, but it's less tiring than having to escape slavery and having to save my family, going back over and over again like Harriet Tubman. It's a lot less work than having to fight against people being lynched right in front of me. Now, there's an asterisk to that because we know we're still being lynched. We know that. But looking back at those people who did all of that work, and the women, especially the Black women who literally paved every single way for all of us all over the world, looking at them, I try to think of it as, okay, if they did this for me, I have to do something for someone else, you know, in the future. So when people ask me questions, I try to just take a breath and say, okay, I can answer this question, and then I can detach. I can give them something, and then I don't have to say anything else. Or I can say, this is all I can say to you, and maybe that will help. And I do hope that people who are asking all these questions are actually listening for the answer, and not simply checking a box of, did I talk to my Black friend today? Did I ask about Black stuff today? That's not enough, you know, because I'm Black 24/7, so it's not, I can't turn it off. And so you shouldn't also be able to turn off your care for our issues. So there's a long-winded answer to your question.
That's really interesting, the fact that some people don't have to think about Blackness because they're not Black, or maybe they're not in an environment where they're forced to. And I'm going to, it's not really a question, I'm going to make some statements, and maybe Fabienne, you can jump in. Growing up in Haiti, in an all-Black nation, I did think about race because there's a lot of colorism, but it wasn't the same as being in the US, where it's actually, the tension is actually between two different races. So when I moved from Haiti to the US, I was really ignorant in terms of the racial history of the United States, and also ignorant of the fact that there was so much tension still existing. And it's interesting thinking back about it, those ideas that people tried to share with me when I asked, for instance, about racism in the US. Some answers were, well, Black people are always complaining about a past that is long gone, and if they're not advancing in their lives, it's because they focus too much on the past and they can't see through it and work toward the future, which unfortunately was reinforced by some Black individuals in position of power who were giving kind of the same message, which I found suspicious from the beginning. I did not necessarily took the time to question them, but there was a part of me that was saying that can't be right. An entire people cannot be so lazy and focus on the past that they're unable to move forward. So I guess the question that I'm asking is to both of you, when is that one moment, or maybe it cannot be one moment, but the moment that you remember the most, where you really felt Black, where you really felt that all the history, whether it was the history of the Black people in the US, or going back further to our ancestors in Africa, or whether you were in the Caribbean when it happened, what is that moment when you really felt the weight of that history? And also, I would say the hope that it brings in terms of all the power that comes with Black identity.
Great question. I'm processing what you asked. It's such a great question. I feel like everything you just said, I'm with you on that, because I've also I've had the same experience, and I think that one of the issues that we have, I know we're not alone in this. A lot of immigrants, or at least speak for Haitian immigrants who come to the United States, often come with that idea in their mind that their experience is different, and that that this is everything that Black America complains about can't be like, that can't be right. This must be like them just complaining, and I think that I've come to the conclusion that why it happens is because we don't have enough education about Black America and Haiti, which is one of the things that maybe before I die, I would like to help change with literature, at least. I think that we should be teaching a lot more in Haiti about the Black experience in America. But I think the moment where I felt it, and I was beginning to feel it, but the moment where everything really changed completely for me was when Trayvon Martin died. And I know that sounds late, but again, remember, I'm coming from that experience of not having, we don't have the similar experiences in Haiti, and being in this place where all of a sudden we are watching the murder, just blatant murder of Black people, right? I saw Trayvon, and I didn't realize, but I actually came to understand that, wow, this is like all of us. This is not just him. Something's going on here. And when I really felt it is when I actually got into an argument with someone I thought was a friend and was white, and completely gaslit me, insulted me, made me feel like this was all in our heads and we're just all complaining. And I was like, oh, wow, this is it. This is it. This is horrible. That's the moment that struck me the most, and I'll never forget that experience. It changed our relationship to the point where we stopped talking completely. I just realized that there are, at least for Black people, there are two Americas. There's the America that other people experience, and there's us, and I just realized this is going to be a struggle for all Black people, not just Black Americans. This is all of us, because as I was saying to someone today that I ended up blocking on social media, when we get pulled over by the police, they don't ask for our identity card. They don't want to see our passports, where we came from. They just automatically put all of us in the same bag. And this has been like, it's been painful, but it was necessary for me to go through that, for me to get where I am today. But it's it's something that I'll never forget. So hopefully that answers your question, and I didn't
Absolutely.
rant.
Ashley?
First of all, thank you for sharing that. As a Black American, we don't have enough connection to Black people from around the world, which I think is definitely a tool of the white patriarchy to divide people, especially people of color, because if we are separate, then we can't unite against oppression, because we think that, our experiences are different somehow, or that there's a hierarchy of some kind. So I'm sad to hear, what you went through, but I'm also glad that we're kind of able to, come together around a shared pain, if that makes any sense. I was trying to think of a moment where I felt the most Black, or I felt the weight, I think is how you phrased it, the weight of Black identity. I think a lot of my most memorable moments happened in elementary school, which I know is a long time ago. I'll be 30 in a month. So, 25 years ago was when I first kind of started understanding what it meant to be a Black person. The first experience I can remember very clearly is in kindergarten. I had a best friend. He was a white boy. We had the same last name. It was super cute. He had a mullet. It was great. We played every day during our little playtime, and we loved to play house together. There was like a little house play set. We would, cook dinner together and, talk about our kids. And, it was just a cute little 5-year-old thing. And his family came to visit one day, and they didn't approach us. He and I were playing like we always did every single day. And I saw them from across the room, and they were looking toward us. And, I was excited because that's my best friend's family. How interesting to, finally see them. And I honestly will never forget, and I can't clearly see it, but I remember just feeling something weird when I looked at his family looking at us. I didn't know what they were thinking. But the next day, he, without really explaining why, decided that he could not play with me anymore. I was replaced by a little white girl. They were playing house, and they really wouldn't include me. I followed them around to all the stations because, again, that was my best friend. We played every single day, every single station. We were playing every game together, and they wouldn't let me be involved. And I felt a lot of hurt, obviously, because I just didn't understand. And of course, people could explain it away as, oh, he was 5. Fine. But a 5-year-old is still a human being. And I felt incredible pain. And it wasn't until I got older that I started to put the pieces together and realized how threatening that must have been to see their white son playing house with a black girl. That's a lot of people's nightmare, And so that's the moment I remember feeling the weight. That, in conjunction with his learning about slavery and some of the more painful parts of Black history as a young person, it scared me so much that I stopped reading about it. And my family had to kind of reel me back in. They were like, "Are you self-hating? What are you doing? We didn't raise you this way." But truly, I was just afraid that we would be recaptured or, re-enslaved or something. But I also was taught a lot about the joy of Blackness in my home, but also in books that I read. I read this book of poetry called Honey, I Love by Eloise Greenfield. And it just opened up so much Black joy for me, just seeing this woman express herself, not always with standard English. Sometimes she would use what's called the vernacular, African-American vernacular. And it was beautiful. It was amazing. There was all these just scenes of being Black and loving it. And so I had a lot of both as a very young person. So yeah, it's been a while for me. And as far as kind of a similar moment to what Fabi has said, even though I grew up knowing about being Black and the history in my city, Birmingham, you couldn't escape it. Growing up here, you knew everything. You saw the street where they hosed them down. You saw the church that they bombed. It's all in front of you. But the moment of how do I say, a sobering reality kind of hit me in my early 20s when I visited the 16th Street Baptist Church, and we stood where the bathroom was before it was blown up. And something, I would say a spirit, because that's who I am, I'm kind of a woo-woo kind of person, but a spirit seemed to descend upon the area, and something in me was like, this could have been you. You could have literally died right here in this very spot for no other reason that you were Black and in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that was sort of a turning point for me. And that's when my poetry started to reflect how I felt about being Black and the history and all that.
Thank you so much. It's so beautiful what you said, Fabi, your insight on just growing up, not in terms of age, but becoming someone who was self-aware and aware of the way the world works. I mean, wow. Thank you so much for sharing those stories. And one thing that I gathered from what you guys shared is the importance of I've come to hate that word self-care, because it seems that everything is self-care now, and it's so much has been done to trivialize the term. But you talked about Black joy, right? And I'm thinking about Fabienne, who's raising 2 young kids, and about the world that you're trying to live for them. And I'm thinking about your work, Ashley, as a writer and as a voice for Black women. How do you cultivate Black joy in your everyday life? And Yeah, I'm gonna say it. How do you practice self-care?
I'll take it so you can have a break from being first, Fabi. If you want. I mean, I'm imposing
Yes,
that.
no, please, because I don't even know the best way yet. Let me think about it.
Okay, so how do I create Black joy and do self-care, right? So I'm gonna start by saying I totally agree about the trivialization of the word self-care. Like, I feel like everything becomes so just trivialized, really. Anything in the world has become just a commodity, which we don't have time to unpack that. But I'll start with self-care. So I have really been embracing, as I move toward being 30 years old, I'm so excited. Like, y'all don't even, maybe you do know, but I'm so excited to not be 20 something anymore. Like, the 20s are poison. It's pure poison. And I've had a great run, great decade as a 20 something. I'm not knocking all the stuff that's happened, but just on the like social, emotional side, there's a lot of, but as I move toward 30, I've been really embracing no, because I, as a youngster, was very much a people pleaser, and I based my self-worth on what I could do for people, what they could, see me, how they could see me as a person of value. And so as I've gotten older, I've really leaned into no, I don't want to do this. No, period. That's the end of my sentence. You don't have to know why, just no. Or taking myself out of situations that weren't serving me, or that made me feel uncomfortable, or that made me feel like I was working against my mission or my goal, in liberating my people, or even in just being a happy Ashley. I'm trying to eliminate all those sort of toxins from my life. And leaning into the no also includes speaking up for myself, which I didn't always do. And that actually does produce a lot of joy for me when I'm able to recognize a situation that is not good for me or for someone I care about, and to be able to say something about it and stand behind that statement just makes me feel super happy and joyful, because I feel like I'm tapping into some sort of strength that's necessary for survival. But yeah, Black joy is everywhere and everything. I mean, for me, it's just in seeing Black people being alive. That's really joyful. Thinking about some of my family members who are not here anymore, like thinking about the way my grandmother laughed, that brings me a lot of joy. Eating really good food, or listening to Black songs, watching Black television shows, dancing, lusting after Black celebrities, whatever. Like, all of it just brings me so much joy. Reading Black poetry, writing Black poetry, and just being a Black person, it's just so joyful. Like, I think that's something that gets overlooked, I guess, when we're talking about all the pain that we share, because it's almost an insurmountable amount of pain. But there's also just this amazing culture that we have, and even across, I would say, borders. Obviously I'm not Haitian. I have never been to Haiti. I hope one day I can go and see it. But I feel like there are certain things just about being a Black person anywhere across the world that we can talk about and find joy in. Even just that conversation we had over Facebook about hair. I was so happy just talking about hair with you guys. Like, it just brings me such joy to know that we can celebrate anything together. We can celebrate each other. We can talk about, Blue Magic hair grease together. Like, stuff like that brings me joy.
Yeah, I think those are great things too. I really appreciated being able to talk about the things that you don't feel safe talking about in the open with just any other person but Black people. So talking about hair is great. Also talking about mental health, I find, has been like super helpful. And an interesting thing that's happened to me recently is I've been seeing a therapist for a while, a couple of years actually, and she's not Black. So recently I found myself like searching for a Black therapist. Not to say that the one that I have was terrible, but there's been a need for me to connect with someone who's culturally similar to me, so that they don't look at me crazy when I talk about the way that I feel. And I didn't say anything to her. I'm still looking. But the interesting thing that happened with George Floyd is that she approached the subject with me. And because she opened the door, I walked right in. I told her exactly how I felt about all these things that were happening. And we had this interesting moment where I was crying, but she also started to cry because she felt like she had failed. She felt like she finally understood, and she told me this, that she finally understood what it was like, because I'd never felt comfortable to talk about race with her. And she didn't know what to say or do, but it was a moment of reckoning for her. And she listened to what I had to say. So the mental health aspect has been very important. Being able to talk about depression, which, I go through every now and then. I go through these moments, especially with this pandemic happening. I feel like there's a huge need. And I know everyone thinks that, yeah, we all need it, but I think Black people really need it, because you look at, what's happening with the pandemic. You look at the numbers and you look at who it is that's doing the dying, and it's us. That's depressing. That's alarming. And I feel like we really need outlets, like bad, to talk about it. So the mental health aspect has been very good for me. And then allowing myself, it's interesting because actually you were just saying that you are at a moment where you feel like you are finally liberated to say no, and I love that. I feel like I'm in a moment in my life where I'm liberated to write whatever I want to write, without being policed, or being told that this is probably too political, it's a little too much, maybe you shouldn't. I don't even care anymore. So that's been very liberating, and that's, for me, is part of self-care, because it's really the only thing I've got. And even if I'm not writing a poem about exactly how I feel, even if I'm just writing a novel, the novel is part of self-care for me. So yeah.
So we talked about the way we're dealing with life right now, right? The idea of Black joy, the idea of taking care of ourselves, particularly of our mental health. Now, I'm curious, what's ahead? What do you see happening in the next few weeks, the next few months? And what are you doing to get ready for what's coming?
Ashley, you want to go?
I just want to say, you're really killing us with these questions, MJ.
That's why I was like, Ashley, that's what
You're really just going for it. But that's your job. That's what you do. That's great. What is going to happen in the next few months? Well, personally, I'm going to be 30. It's going to be amazing. That I'm looking forward to. I'm preparing by buying all the outfits for this amazing photo shoot I'm going to do. But more largely, what do I think is coming? Well, I think for one, there's going to be definitely continued fighting and expanded fighting. And what I mean by that is, of course, I'm dealing with pandemic and all that entails. I'm Black, so I'm dealing with the Black stuff, but I'm also a teacher, and y'all probably know where I'm going with this, but there's this huge discussion about whether or not we should return to school, whether or not it's safe. We know what's his name in the White House, who we will not name here, is doing his thing, and is only concerned about how everything looks going into his election, whatever. And so I think that there will be a fight for teachers' rights and for the protection of vulnerable students as well. Hopefully that fight is a short and easily solved one, because I think any reasonable person should be able to agree that it will be unsafe to have a bunch of people in a building, period. I hope that's an obvious conclusion that people will arrive at sooner rather than later, before any children have to die. And they already have, but hopefully we don't have many more because we're back in school. So I think there's going to be a lot more fighting, but I also hope that there's going to be some conversations at our local and state levels, because again, we know we can't fool with the person in the White House. We know that. There's no doing anything with that right now. I do hope that there's more engagement between, like I said, local government and citizens, and maybe some movement around reimagined ways of running things, whether that's looking at how policing operates, looking at the funding, which we would love to have in education. We'd love to just bring that on back to the children, or looking at just how we do things and how they can be changed, because clearly they're not working. I mean, if we go all the way back to the Constitution, that was not written with any of us in mind, so we probably need to do something about that. And then moving forward toward the big vote coming up, and trying to get people out to the polls as safely as is humanly possible, and just moving on and trying to get away from the state that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well said. What about you, Fabienne?
I definitely, I feel like I'm in a place where I just want to focus on us, and us, I just mean Black people. And how we're going to do that is going to be different for, I guess, many of us, but I feel like I just want to do whatever I can to move the conversation forward and make things happen for us, rather than worry about explaining constantly to other people why we deserve to be happy, why we are human and we deserve joy. So I think that, what I'm looking forward to is to continue to write, but also to be able to bring what I have to the table, which is my identity as a Haitian woman in the Black world. So I just really want to make this writing that I'm doing a whole Pan-African thing. That would be the dream. I just want all of us to talk to each other and figure out how to make ourselves happy without having to rely on anyone else for that. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of hopelessness in me. Maybe it'll change. But I don't have any high hopes for the election. And I'm not trying to be political, but I'm just trying to be realistic. I feel like it's going to get really, really dark for a minute, and we have to brace ourselves, because I think that even if the results of the election end up to be what we want them to be, I think that that person who's in the White House right now is not going to go away quietly. That's my opinion. So I think we have to take care of, maximize the self-care right now and find ways in which to protect ourselves, because it's going to take a toll on us emotionally. I think the only way to do that is to focus on us, education-wise, focus on the arts, focus on, organizing each other so that we can be in a place where we are taking care of us, and the kids that are coming in the future are going to be, in a place where they can, they can feel like they've been prepared and they have the tools that they need. That's really that's what I'm saying right now for the future.
Wow, a lot is coming our way. We're already going through a lot, and you guys are so right. We need to brace ourselves and get to be ready for whatever is going to happen next. Ladies, thank you so much for coming today, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your experience with us. And you're definitely two badass Black girls, and I'm so honored that you said yes to my invitation. Any last word before we go?
Well, I love this. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having us. I'm so happy to be able to reconnect with both of you and to have a chance to talk about all this stuff, because we need a place to talk about it. So this place that you created right here, MJ, is it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. This has been really fantastic to see you guys, through a screen. Hopefully I'll see you in person again, soon. And yeah, just thank you for creating space now and in the distant past, when I lived in South Florida, I really was encouraged to see y'all just existing, honestly. Like, that always helped me to do the things that I do. So I just thank y'all for being who you are. And yeah, when it's time to get on this fight that you talked about, Fabi, I will be holding tight to you guys and all of my awesome Black sisters. So
Much love to you guys, and I'll see you again soon.
Love you. See you soon.
y'all.